This is chapter 11 of A House Tale, which is a documentary of Dad and me building a small house in the Virginia Blue Ridge Mountains. In this chapter we'll discuss the interior finishing work, such as the wallboard, flooring, and cabinetry. I'm Sonny, and you can see me here taking a well-deserved break before we start the final push to complete our tiny house. I have been narrating this documentary, and we have already completed chapters 1 to 10, including a preface. All our previous chapters are posted on our YouTube channel, Buster Building. With the plumbing and electrical all done, we could start to put up the interior wallboard. We insulated the 6-inch walls first with our 19 fiberglass insulation, taking pains to seal around the outlets boxes to minimize air leaks. Then we concentrated on the attic insulation. Typically, a contractor would install all of the ceiling, then probably insulate the attic using blown-in insulation. We're not a big fan of blown-in insulation. We have seen substantial settlement on past projects, plus it's hard to deal with if attic access is required on future building modifications. We used roll fiberglass insulation, but installed it in a method that is not typically done. We installed a couple of 4x8 sheets for the ceiling, then insulated above them, then repeated the process. This way, we could work from a ladder inside the house, and did not have to crawl in a hot attic with little ventilation, with the exception of the last 2 sheets. Note the baffles that were installed to prevent the insulation from blocking the airflow from the soffit vents. It's very important to keep this airway open to prevent moisture buildup, and to keep attic temperatures lower in summer. Here's the ductwork for the bathroom fan before we added insulation around and over it. The moist air from the bathroom should not be exhausted into the attic. It should be exhausted to the exterior. This can be done through a penetration through the roof or out the gable end as we did here. You might see a lot of bathroom fans being exhausted out under the soffits where attic venting is located. This arrangement discharges moist air out where the soffit vents can pick it up, pulling it back into the attic, thus short-circuiting the benefit, and possibly leading to attic mold. Typically, in a contemporary house, the interior wallboard, over the studs, would be sheetrock. We investigated using something else, beadboard, which is similar to plywood, with one side having longitudinal decorative grooves. Here's a chart we put together showing some of the pros and cons. Although the cost of the material was more than sheetrock, no finishing is required, which helped to offset the additional cost, or may be cheaper overall. The use of beadboard also speeded up the schedule. With only me and Dad installing the wallboard, lightweight was a major factor, and the beadboard option fit the bill to a T. Another benefit is that my mom painted all the 4x8 sheets outside the house, prior to us installing them. We had to be very careful to plan each joint because beadboard has a pre-finished shiplap joint on each long side of the 4x8 sheets. If one haphazardly starts throwing up sheets, one could end up with a lot of waste with no way to make the joints work. With sheetrock, one doesn't have to worry about this issue because joints can be made on all edges using various sizes of sheets. We did have some waste, but we managed to use most of it for other building elements, more on this later. This is how a beadboard shiplap joint is made, being demonstrated with 2 scrap pieces. You can see how the 2 sides are mated and then nailed. The measuring and sawing operation for the beadboard was set up in the largest room, the living room. Note the sheetrock lift in the background. We had this piece of equipment left over from a past garage project and it was useful to install the beadboard ceiling. Here's the kitchen area. Note that all openings for the electrical outlets had to be trimmed out exactly. Unlike sheetrock where one can apply joint compound to fix an oversized opening or mistake, there is no room for error using beadboard. If one messes up, another sheet has to be used, and hopefully the incorrect cut sheet can be trimmed to use elsewhere. Beadboard was used in every room, including the bathroom. A high-grade Sherwin-Williams paint was used in the bathroom for greater moisture resistance. One does have to use trim boards when using beadboard in the wall corners, at floor and ceiling intersections, and around doors and windows openings. Trim boards were also required on the ceiling when the short sides of beadboard sheets intersect. There are no pre-finished joints on the 4-foot sides. We used a brown trim color with antique white colored walls. It made for a nice country feel. We installed doors to hide the washer and dryer, which are not shown in this photo. Here's the bedroom. It's time for a break from all this finish work. Sometimes when we walked over to the job site, Dad and me played hide and seek. He's pretty good at hiding, but I do have an advantage over him. Scientists say my nose is 10,000 to 100,000 times better than my dad's big nose. Let's get back to work. Remember earlier where we discussed the potential problem of waste using beadboard? We came up with a way to just about use all our waste. We made beadboard kitchen cabinets. First, we sketched up our cabinets based on using 2x4 and 2x6 lumber as the framework. Then we covered the framework with beadboard. The resulting cabinetry turned out sturdy with a country flair, and the cost was low as well. We used the same colors of brown and antique white to match the rooms. We had not installed the doors on the sink base at this point. The doors were also made from scrap pieces of trim boards and the beadboard. The last item we installed was the laminated vinyl flooring. We found installing flooring very rewarding, dare I say, fun. This job was perfect for me as a dog because it requires one lane on the floor. Once one determines the layout baseline through the entire length of the house, it's basically snap snap snap, as the vinyl flooring basically snaps together. The layout baseline alignment must be set up to avoid any skinny pieces near a wall. One might think the flooring installation begins against a wall, but it's better to start near the center of a room and work towards a wall, checking the distance from the wall at intervals, ensuring the alignment is parallel to the wall. Also, one needs to cut the flooring at various lengths to stagger the end joints. Time to discuss the finishing of the crawl space and the insulation of the floor. Most crawl space floors are insulated using batt fiberglass held up by spring wire supports. We are not big fans of this method, seen too many crawl spaces where the insulation is drooping, dusty, and downright messy. So, we decided to use rigid insulation, glued to the foundation walls. In this method, one also has to cut small rectangular pieces to fit between the floor joists around the perimeter band joist. Here are some of the smaller pieces stored in our garage, ready to be glued. Insulating the crawlspace walls also provides ultimate protection against freezing of the water system and water lines. We also installed a white 12mm vapor barrier, which really brighten up this normally dark, dungeon-like area. The only way that crawlspace wall insulation will work as intended is to provide insulated foundation vent covers. These covers need to be in place by late fall to retain crawlspace heat. We are somewhat proud of our design of these covers. All wood components touching masonry are pressure treated and they incorporate rigid insulation to create a tight barrier against freezing temperatures. We also built the crawlspace access door with rigid insulation. Here's the small heat pump unit for the mini-split system. We did hire a contractor to install it, but we installed the electrical circuit for it to save cost. The building code also required an exterior electrical outlet near exterior mechanical equipment which we installed. We also installed a satellite /cable TV connection box, which may never be used with the popularity of broadband now. Cables were run to each room from this box. We also installed a small propane tank along with a propane wall furnace as a backup in case of a winter power failure. Well, this concludes the building portion of our small house documentary, which is good because I'm all out of Cheerios, and I really need a dose of energy. Stay tuned because we have one last chapter planned, Reflections. End of chapter 11.